For everything that I learn, I realize there's 5 things that I need to learn. I mean, let's face it, photography is a lot of fun, but it's hard to get better. I mean, it takes a lot of work, a lot of effort, a lot of learning. Composition, the lighting, the settings on the camera, post-processing, all of that combined to get the picture that you see in your mind's eye when you're looking at the subject or the landscape or whatever, you know, it is that you're photographing or videoing for that matter. To use your equipment and use everything at your disposal to make that image match what your mind's eye is seeing and what you know is capable. And the only question is, can you do it with the equipment you have? So that's just the whole point of what I love to do. That's why I love photography. This is just a fun day out doing what I love to do as my hobby, because I do have a full-time job and I'm a parent of 3 kids and I'm a husband, so I don't have just hours and hours to practice this. So when I do have the time, I like to take advantage of it and if I can, share it with you guys. So this is I'm just going to take a bunch of photos here and probably not much video, but then I'll take them, edit them, and talk about them afterwards. And we'll kind of go through, I'll show you my process here, and I'd love some tips, some pointers, and maybe some of this could help you. So throughout the course of this walkthrough, shoot, whatever, is I alternate between regular and live view mode, where I'll go to live view, and a lot of times I'm just using the back screen and simply touching it, especially for shots that are like down low or in a weird spot and I know I can't get to the viewfinder, you know, or I probably could, but I'm just not going to get on the floor in one of these places to get the shot. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll scroll through, I'll zoom in and check to see if it hit focus, and if it hit focus pretty well, then I'll keep the image and I'll work on it a little bit. If it didn't, then I'll pretty much just ignore it and move on. I don't like to crop a ton unless the image is razor sharp. And then once I crop it, I like to bump up the dehaze a little bit. I'm always messing with the shadows and the highlights, especially if I'm indoors. You know, as you can see here, I've got the windows in the background blown out. So I'm going to bring the highlights down in almost all these, raise the shadows a little bit, kind of work on that high dynamic range, you know, give it more dynamic range. And it's all pretty simple. I mean, I think this is the standard, you know, standard operating procedure for most people who are not doing too much with the colors, but I will mess with the warmth and the you know, the temperature, kind of warm it up a bit. If I feel like it's too cold, too blue, I'll bring a little bit of the reds and oranges in. Sometimes I'll go down into the split toning and mess with that a little bit, especially for like landscapes and stuff where there's leaves. But for this setting, for this basic, you know, indoor shot with a little bit of natural lighting and a lot of like, well, actually a lot of natural lighting, but it was a real cold lighting. So I'd like to bump up the warmth a little bit. And anytime I go way up on the dehaze or anything like that, I like to pull back the saturation, and if a color looks way off, I'll go down and actually adjust the color itself. So for example, if I bump the dehaze up a little bit, which I probably use more than I should, but anyways, if I bump that up and my skin tone looks a little funky, or somebody's skin tone looks funky, I'll go down into the, you know, the orange or, you know, the reds even, and just take them down a notch just to kind of even out the skin tone, because I still want some of the objects around to take advantage of that dehaze option. I think everybody does similar things in their edits in Lightroom. I do this a lot. I crop to straighten the image and match up lines and get it as straight as possible to, you know, horizontally, vertically, trying to find edges to line up and make it look that, you know, I think that's really, really helps appealing to the eye. The 6D Mark II, I've said this before, unless you're in live view mode, which I do shoot a lot in, but if you're through the viewfinder, you got a smaller clump of focal points. So a lot of times my focus is in the center, and unfortunately I have to crop at times, not all the time, but at times I have to crop to get that rule of thirds that I like to go by. And I mean, like I said, not every rule, I don't follow every rule to photography all the time, but there's a lot of them that are there for a reason. They make sense. The rule of thirds is definitely one of them that can definitely enhance a photo if you know how to use it. So again, these are just some of the processes that I'm using. I'm not going to go too much further into this, but now when you're out doing kind of like what I like to do, which is wandering and looking for cool things to take pictures of, it's a lot different than your typical photo shoot where you have a specific subject and you know exactly what pictures you're going to take, like for a portrait session or for a wedding. You know the exact, the way you want them to stand, the lighting you want, which apertures to use, all the stuff that you're going to need beforehand to make it look good, right? And to give them a quality photo. But when you're kind of freelancing it and just having fun and out kind of, experimenting with different angles, different apertures, and kind of newer lenses, newer to you, it's really easy to waste an entire hour taking horrible pictures. Luckily today, I came across this cool thing right here. I don't even know what you would call this. Some wooden structure that's spinning around 360 degrees with trains running around it the opposite direction it's spinning. So it's spinning clockwise. The trains are driving around counterclockwise, and there's just a million little intricate parts to this structure, I'll call it, because I don't know what else you would call it. And I found a lot of really cool little nooks and crannies in it that I thought would look really cool to try to get to separate from the rest and kind of focus on just those. So what I did in this particular situation here is I used this guy, this big heavy guy, the 70-200. And yes, I know this is going to give great images. It's a $2,000 lens, but I didn't need that. It's just I own it, so I'm going to practice with it as much as I can and learn as much about it as I can. I could have easily used my 55-250 and got excellent results as well. Okay, so I know that's not the point. The point is to experiment, learn, get better at what you're doing with the gear that you do have. I didn't have that gear this whole time. I started with the 55-250 that I got for $92 with the T7i a couple of years ago, before I even knew what aperture meant. Okay, I started with that, and now 2 years later, I'm still trying to get that image with my gear to match what I see in my mind that I want and how I want it to look. And I know for a fact, even some of you photographers out there, if you're watching this and if you've taken hundreds of thousands of photos, there's still days, there's still times, there's still those moments where you take these pictures and you have this image in your mind that you really want to capture and you're just struggling to get it. And you may think you got it, and you get home and you look on your computer and it might look okay on the screen. You look on your computer, it's just not what you wanted. And that is, to me, that is the fun. That's what keeps me going, is that challenge to get those two things to line up and to know for a fact that when I go out to take these pictures, I'm going to see something and I'm going to know exactly what lens to use, what settings to use, and most importantly, I'm going to know how to shoot it in preparation for post-processing, because that's a huge role as well. So you have to combine all these things, and it just takes so much practice. And I equate it a lot to golf, where it's just no two rounds are alike, and it's like anywhere you go in photography, no two situations seem to be alike. I mean, obviously you could have studio setups and stuff like that, but I'm saying if you're just going out and freelancing and in experimenting and going to different situations, even two shoots in the exact same location, depending on the time of day, the sun, all of that could drastically change your end results. And to me, that's the fun. That's the beauty of photography, of videography, is that constant challenge and that constant ability to figure out how to overcome these problems. Because that's basically all you're doing in photography, is you're overcoming problems with light. You're overcoming how to get this angle, how to get a little closer, how to set it up so that way that photo just matches up with how you're seeing it in your mind. And you only have a limited amount of gear to do it. and then the rest is up to you and your creativity. And how you get from point A to point B, that is the fun. That's where it all that super fun and that magic, so to speak, happens. So I don't know. I just get really inspired when I think about that stuff, and it's so fun. You know, you get out and you find, especially today, honestly, I went in there expecting to see a lot of the same. I didn't know they had that weird spinning thing at the conservatory. And when I saw it, instantly knew. I said, look, I'm intrigued by this. So I know that I'm going to get good photos that are going to be interesting because I am interested in it. And that's the key, I think. You know, I'm still learning so much every day, and I'm sharing, and I do reviews on cameras and on lenses, and I try to give information as I learn it. By no means am I, you know, like if you were to say, how far do you feel like you are in your knowledge of photography and videography, I would say I'm at like the third step of a 20-step staircase. I just feel like there's so much more to learn. There's always more to learn. And you know, that's to me, that is the fun, the learning, the process, going through it, you know, taking a million crappy photos to get those 3 phenomenal photos that, you know, you can't wait to frame and hang up somewhere. So, all right, well, I think I've rambled enough. And look, if nothing else, I hope that this could maybe inspire you or help you somehow, some way, just get out, enjoy photography for what it is, and that is, in my mind, overcoming problems, learning, dealing with situations the best you can with the gear that you have, and having a ton of fun in the process. So, as always, thanks for watching. Subscribe, and it's a new year, it's a new time. Get out, take some photos. We will see you soon, I hope.